Okay. All right, Nathan and Michael, take it away, and I'll just be in the background, keeping things moving along.
Well, but Leaf, just to frame it, although Nathan and my name was prominently featured on this, we definitely want to make this interactive. But Leaf, you also are going to be a part of it, and we invite you to be a part of it because oftentimes you don't give yourself enough of a platform, and I think you have such valuable stuff to say, and so you're kind of part of the team. So just Nathan, if I might, just a quick context is that Nathan and I do not know each other prior to this little pairing, and we've had one delightful phone call and a Zoom call, and we know each other already a little bit better than we did before, and found that we just had a lot of kind of flow when we talked to each other, and it was really, I mean, Nathan, I thought there were two really great conversations.
Oh yes, I really enjoyed them, and I felt like you said, we're coming into this call only connecting with each other twice, but I feel pretty grounded in sort of the space that we can offer, and I do feel like we had a nice flow. So it really was quite complimentary. So I definitely agree.
So how would you, I mean, being the goal-directed Swiss, how would you say, what's our goal today? What are we going to be doing the next, I don't know, 25, half an hour, whatever it is?
Well, sort of going off of, the previous calls that we've had through the group this month, we're wanting to offer, a space where we can, hear from others in the community about, sort of the rituals that they have in their life, the sort of practices that they find quite helpful in dealing with these, really at times sensationalized times where things can be really difficult to discern, what's really happening and how difficult it can be to even have these conversations because there's so many touchy topics that it can be challenging to know, to what extent we want to, put our voice in there about something that, we have a concern about that's happening in our world. So,
yeah, this of ritual, really got me thinking. I'm not a therapist. I'm, sort of an administrator, animal caretaker slash that sort of direction. But ritual, I always start thinking about people dancing around a fire or some sort of, I don't know, very kind of outlandish thing, and yet at the same time ritual can be something we do in everyday life because we have to do it, and it just becomes something that has meaning beyond what it is, washing dishes or cleaning a stall. I came up with cleaning a stall as being something that's very sort of centering for me. So maybe that's an opening question for anybody who's willing to jump in. Well, what do you see a ritual, and what does it do for you?
Hi, Michael, Nathan, and everybody. I love that because rituals are such a big part of my life and world. And I think rituals are really an anchor, I find, because for something to be a ritual, and it can be the simplest thing, as you say, like mucking a stall or, manure meditations, as Barbara Rector always called it, or making a cup of tea, and just having a cup of tea can be a ritual because it's about paying attention with intention, again, to quote sort of Barbara, but that's it. It's the intention behind it. So anything can. And I think what it does is it brings us very present, or what I find. So rituals can be incredibly simple, and just having those little anchor points, those touch points that bring us present to what is true now in a day. Just those moments where you can reset and just kind of go, or just refocus on what's true for you when things are crazy. So that would be my offering.
Thank you.
And everyone, I also want to point out that's Judy Brightman, and she is another of our admin moderators. So, so also welcome to the team here, Judy. Thank you for being here.
Maybe one more person or two?
Ritual's not really, so my name is Jennifer and I'm actually connecting from Peterborough, Canada, in Ontario. And ritual isn't a word that's really part of my vocabulary. However, I would, I think when I think of the word, for me, a ritual is just an invitation to look around wherever you are, to give yourself permission to look around, to see, to be present, to breathe. Anytime you're moving from one space to another, it's an invitation to look around. I will add in my vote for cleaning stalls as a great place to start. Gets me out of my head. I think that's one of the benefits of a ritual, is it gets you out of your head.
Mm-hmm. Nathan, is there a difference between sort of ritual from the therapist perspective and, you know, as part of sort of a healing process versus sort of the everyday ritual that we kind of all depend on and do and utilize? I don't even know if that's a really smart question.
Well, I think rituals can definitely be used very deliberately, and then, you know, rituals, I think that we can have some flexibility with our rituals as well. So, I mean, to give an example, one of the rituals that I have, I have these 7 words, and so I refer to them as my 7 seeds, so to speak, and 1 word for each day of the week. And these particular words are set in my calendar, so they come up as a reminder. So 3 times a day, love, joy, bliss, gratitude, courage, surrender. They will pop up on my phone or pop up on my computer. And if in the moment I, you know, can take the time to become more present and look around and sort of, I suppose, bask in a sense of one of those, you know, what those words mean to me and how that word is showing up in my life in that moment. And if I can take advantage of that, then that's great. If in that moment I just simply don't have the time, it's just there as a simple little reminder that even if I can't really take the time to dwell and focus and savor, you know, how that's showing up in my life at the time, it's at least there. It's in the back of my mind that, you know, that's certainly present. So does that kind of answer your question in some regard, in terms of how there could be some flow, some flexibility? It doesn't have to be something that is really deliberate as well.
Yeah. I don't know about everybody here, but one of the things that COVID really did in our lives, or in my life anyway, is it has disrupted so many ritualistic things that happen throughout the year, be it in the spring, in the summer, in the fall, be it at my workplace, be it at home, in my neighborhood. And there was this like stop of so many things. And I think that then borders on the loss that, you know, the group and Leaf and we all have sort of talked about. And then I guess the next question is how do you reestablish ritual once it's been disrupted and lost? Does that resonate with anybody?
I think it's about being intentional. So I think COVID has really, COVID has disrupted not only ritual, but routine. And so it's invited us to revisit what your routine is. What does it look like? And out of new routines come new rituals.
Oh, I love that.
Yes.
Say more. That's big.
Well, for me personally, one of my rituals is walking my dogs every morning now, and just noticing, I think COVID, because of the lack of connection with human beings, you are I find myself more connected to nature and the animals that populate our farm. And so I would consider, my routine now includes, going for a walk every morning in a way that's much more mindful and intentional than it was previously, because my head was probably a lot fuller of expectations and, things that defined our lives before COVID.
Mhm.
Well, and this might be a really beautiful sort of segue too, to bringing in that question, just what you exactly spoke to is like, how has certainly 2021 or even the last 2 years, sort of how has that helped us to bring in something new and maybe something even new that's positive, right? So sort of what are we bringing forward with us from these years and from these experiences, be those rituals or even just pieces of knowledge or inspiration or idea. So I think that's another question that we three had for you guys as well today.
I think the loss of the ritual, or the can't do that ritual anymore because all the components no longer fit. It gives you that pause to then do that self-reflection and evaluation, or to reevaluate maybe a ritual or a process, or a system that was in place. And I think, it's always exciting. It's always challenging for most humans to have any kind of change, because you lose your security and that comfort. Because in a ritual, you're very comforted. You don't have to think. You get to sit back and say, I've got this. And you go through the process, the ritual, and then it's done and you feel complete, or you feel successful. And I think the scattering of all of those routine ritual processes that we had before, now it's like, oh my God, what do I do now? And so there was a little fear and anxiety that I think lots of people experience, the school kids, the teachers. How do I teach 2 classrooms? I barely do 1 classroom. How do we get kids in the barn? What do we do here? So I see it, it was very challenging, and it continues to present its challenges. I think it's given us that time to reflect and reevaluate. And that pause isn't always given. We don't always make the time for the pause that is sometimes necessary. Just my thoughts.
Yeah, Tiffany, thanks. You just wrote a comment. It has definitely forced us to make changes. That's true. Nathan and I talked a little bit about, and I don't want to, speak for you, Nathan, but you mentioned this idea of people pleasing, and how, so many conversations get contentious so quickly now, and particularly now because people are so charged up over so many different things. Do you want to quickly review that the way you said it to me yesterday?
Certainly. So it's an adaptive strategy for a lot of us. I think especially, so I disclosed to you in terms of this myself, growing up in a very conservative community as a gay man, there was a lot that I had to do to sort of forfeit my voice, forfeit my needs in a particular social milieu that certainly didn't make space or room for a lot of my needs or my voice. And so in these days, and this really heightened, sensationalized media that we experience today, and how that can create really contentious interactions with surprisingly even people that we felt like we really knew quite well, and then we come to find that we have differing views around vaccinations, or the lockdowns, or even sort of what's going on with our climate. And I bring this up, and I'm going to provide some resources, that we'll provide in the group here a bit later. I bring this up or feature this as a topic because I certainly don't want to encourage people to necessarily have more rigid boundaries and feel as though they can use this information to sort of justify becoming, much more rigid in sort of their interactions, but to become aware, to just increase our awareness around how we are sort of forfeiting our voice or our needs in some of these conversations, and the impact that that has. Because I think for a lot of us, we are quite hesitant to, I just the other day I had a friend who reached out to let me know that she was sick, and that she had contracted COVID. And I went through this internal process. I know this person really well, but I wonder, would it feel like a breach of privacy if I were to ask on, her vaccination status? And just recognizing that, there's a lot that we're negotiating, and just allowing ourselves to really kind of recognize what our own process is in terms of, how we would normally just reach out and, make inquiries that before a lot of this sort of happened in our world, that would just feel a bit more natural, and how there's these extra layers, and what that means for us, and how, what that means in terms of how we move forward, trying to be authentic in our own, our own selves, and how we want to show up, not only for ourselves, but for our friends or family members or anyone else in our community. If that makes sense.
And
Yeah,
maybe that's another perfect opportunity for the group to speak a little about what they've noticed in terms of things that they've sort of how they've changed, right, over this last couple years, and maybe patterns, behaviors, be those sort of in the positive, or maybe in that sort of way that Nathan's talking about, that's a little bit, maybe something that you'd like to also let go of as we go forward. So maybe
I see Kristen Mason raising a hand.
Thank you. Oh, you guys are speaking to my heart today, man. Oh man. Yeah, it's it's like you start out where it's concern, because you're concerned with everybody. Then it goes through the phase of, now what do I do, and frustration and confusion and everything. And I feel like, I've always been a reflective person, and God bless Leaf, because she's put up with me for a long time. And she's like my mentor and my go-to person, because she keeps me in line. And I think, like, I have really, my whole entire business has changed, and it's still changing, but it's going to be awesome. It just feels like every time you start moving forward, it's like, bam, because I don't have any help, because every time I turn around, somebody's got COVID. And, it's like, I've lost track of even what to do. I'm vaccinated, but Nathan, you really spoke to the fact that too, you like, I don't want to hear about the politics. I don't want to hear about anything negative that comes across the news. And it seems like maybe I'm just more, aware of it, but it's like, oh my God, will you just please be quiet? I'm trying my best to try to be positive, and I have gone out in nature more, and I've said, and I've tried to make those boundaries better, but still be caring and empathetic and everything. And I'm telling you what, it has been one challenge right after another. And then my horses got equine coronavirus on top of everything last spring. So it was like, but I have faith, I'm a positive person, and I just keep telling myself, okay, look, Kristen, you can do this. Everybody else is doing it, and there is an end at some point. And, I think as time goes on too, my worry has lessened about COVID, especially most of the people around me are vaccinated. It's like, all right, well, everybody's got the flu here now. So thankfully not me, because I've, and I want people back at my farm face to face, but I'm doing teletherapy just because, nobody can get here, and we're in the middle of winter and blah, blah, blah. But anyway, so I'm so glad to be here, honestly. So I really appreciate everything.
Well, Kristen, the one thing that comes to my mind too is that I think what makes it also unstable is that we really have lost the voice of authority to listen to. Who do you listen to? The healthcare agencies in our various countries are not agreeing with each other. It's beyond even political. It's just the science is a little bit vague sometimes. And So you try to be sane, you try to be reasonable and logical, but it's really difficult to do. And then the other thing Nathan and I talked about yesterday is this almost addiction we have to outrage, and we're being primed towards being outraged. The media does it, social media does it. We are, get chunks and bits and pieces of information that often is skewed, and then we react, and I react to it. And so, one of the things we were hoping to talk about in the second half is goals. What are our personal goals for the, foreseeable months? And one of mine really is to really step back, and before I react, before I get mad, angry, sad, upset, to really look at what's happening and trying to sort of look underneath it and maybe get some more information for myself. And I not easy. Not easy.
I see Callie has.
No,
a-
and nope.
Hi. Well, it's interesting because what I originally raised my hand to was kind of in reaction to what Kristen had been saying about kind of that like need or desire for silence. But I think carries over to what Michael was saying, which is like, for me, it's created this shift that's almost in opposition to what Kristen was saying about wanting people back. It's like I found myself really becoming like uncomfortable and more quiet in social situations as everybody else has like a bigger opinion and becomes more like aggressive in what they're feeling and thinking. I feel myself kind of retreating a little bit. And some of it I think is what Michael was talking about, like that need to process and to understand what's really happening. But another part of it is just like handling my own stuff on top of COVID, on top of social unrest. I'm trying to heal from really hard stuff, and I just don't feel like I have the energy anymore for all that going on. And I just find myself really questioning if it's going to return, like that desire for social interaction and that desire to have like heated conflict or to have like hard conversation. I don't find the desire for that now. And so it's like the quiet has become so special, and I don't know what it's going to look like to move forward and to ask for more engagement of myself again.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Other folks want to speak to that kind of that theme or that idea around just sort of what has this time brought to us? Like, what are the ahas? What are the points of inspiration? What are the challenges? Kind of what are we taking out of? What are we coming out of 2021 with and bringing into 2022 before we turn it back over to Michael and Nathan's second part?
If I could speak, I think we're a lot more hypervigilant than we have been in the past. That our level of tolerance is just, I think that's partially what is impacting sort of this idea of one opinion versus another. In the past, we might have been more tolerant of differences, and I just think as the situation that we're in is just, it's put us all in a state of hypervigilance, whether we're aware of it or not. Our nervous systems are all buzzing a little higher than they normally do. And it's interesting because I participated or I listened to conversations. So I'm a therapist and I also operate an equine therapy program here at our farm, and I'm still seeing clients in person, but we're in lockdown again. More recently with coronavirus. And I was listening to a conversation that Veronica Lack had hosted recently. And the conversation, they were talking about horseback riding. And it hadn't even occurred to me. And she made a comment about someone had said to her, well, why would you go riding? You might get hurt, and then you'll be putting more pressure on our medical system. And our medical system, so I spent 8 months working in a hospital recently as a therapist, and we're in crisis. Like, and so I think for me personally, because it resonated with me, because I didn't ride for 6 months, it's like, it's my own sense of what if is much more heightened. My risk taking is much more reduced than it used to be. My sense of courage. Sometimes you feel like you're walking on ice versus just, going for a big skate. And so I know for myself, it's really, I'm becoming much more aware of my own level of hypervigilance. And I think that's what's impacting our comfort level with seeing other people. I mean, it's one thing it's so interesting how even just a relationship from a therapeutic point of view. So we wear masks. Well, I can't see anyone's face. Or I'm in an environment like this where I'm not having that sense of presence with somebody. So we're adapting, but it's not ideal.
Other folks, anyone else want to add in? Thank you so much for that. That was beautiful.
Yes.
Good
Nice
day.
segue.
Yes, good
That
segue.
helped, huh?
I love that painting with the green and the yellow in the background. It's so nice. So, one question that I have, and I don't know if we can just do sort of a show of hands. Is there anybody here who feels like they are stronger now and they are more positive now than they've been in a really long time? How?
Yeah,
Daily
look at Callie.
practice.
Good grief.
I know for me, I feel forced into it, right? So like there's layers. It's not just COVID and all this other stuff. I've had health stuff this last 6 months that has challenged my life. Like fully, I've been fighting for my life for the last 6 months. And so the resolve I have to say is like, well, do you want to live? Yes. Do you want to live in this society? Yes. Do you want to live in it even with all of the troubles? Yes. Do you want to live in it even though you're struggling with interaction? Yes. And so yeah, like I'm playing this really stupid Survivor game online right now, and it's doing stupid little challenges like holding water in a cup up high. I didn't think I could do that until yesterday. Like I thought my body wasn't going to be able to do all these things. And so over the last 2 years, but also the last 6 months, even though it's been harder than anything I've ever had to do, everything is harder than it's ever had to do. And somehow I'm still doing it, and somehow still kind of rising above all of the things that I thought were barriers for myself. And so even though it's scarier than it's ever been, and I don't know what's going to happen, and I feel really unsure, I also feel that there's this little fire in myself that's done more than it's ever done, and that I can lean into it and trust it more than I ever knew to before.
Nice.
Beautiful.
Jen, you had your hand up, or have your hand up.
Yeah, I forgot about those little gadgets. I'm kind of overcoming something. It's COVID, not COVID. So I've had 3 tests now. Still remains not COVID, although all the people I was around had COVID. So I hear what Kaylina, sorry. And so if I were to have that wall that I kind of ran into, realistically, I did a couple of years ago. So I've been having my own health challenges that I've been processing through. And then October, I think after the hurricane in my region, we had one after another. We had flooding one year, we had hurricanes the next, flooding again. And I think the wall I hit was, back in October, and I just couldn't get to the surface. So I understand there's parts of that, but it has been a daily exercise. And we go back to those rituals. And I know some of you may have read this article, but my simple ritual of getting up and making my bed.
Sure.
led me to think that I can do this. If I can get out of bed and I can make the bed, make it look pretty. So when I get back in it at night, it's all, fluffed up and nice. That has been kind of those baby steps having to take and having to address the gratitude as you hit the feet to the ground. And that's my dog agreeing with me, because I'm sorry. It's those little things. And it is hard because we're in a profession that we're uplifting others. We're kind of helping to support others. And we tend to forget that we need to tend to ourselves too. One of my professors in graduate school said, you've got to refill your vessel. And we're givers. We're pouring out our knowledge. We're pouring out our energy and our thoughts and our shares. And because we do all of that gracefully and graciously, we still need to remember to fill ourselves back up. And I think that's crucial, Michael. That exercise, even if I could go clean a stall right now, I would be able to solve all the world's problems. Don't you just feel so accomplished after you finish cleaning the stall?
Absolutely. I cleaned 3 camel stalls today and it was the best thing in the world.
There you go.
But very quickly, what I wanted to, and Kelly Jones, I see you, you're definitely next with your hand up. But Jen, what you were saying, this idea of that metaphor of we pour ourselves out for others and we deplete ourselves and all that. And I find I do best in sort of these give-take situations where I'm getting as much energy as I'm giving.
Yes.
And that's hard to maintain, but I'm very fortunate in my workplace at our therapeutic school to work in a team where even though times are bad, we give each other as much as we're taking or losing. So, but that's not always the case. Kelly, jump in.
Okay, sorry, I haven't been talking much because my voice is coming and going, but I've made a huge transition and moved to another state and completely refocused my energy on what I feel like is going to be most the best use of what you were saying, energy. And so I think that this has knocked me into a space of simplicity where I want to be in a space where I'm able to stay as authentic as I can, as long as I can, with people who are in the same space. And so I think that when I stop and become more present and those around me can feel that the safety piece, I think, grows for all of us. And so for me, I've taken into this new year a sense of abundance, and I keep refocusing on abundance and not scarcity. And it has helped a lot, even going to the grocery store and talking to the cashier in a space of safety and not being afraid and not being worried, and really feeling the energy and the safety within myself, so then I can do it, can be there for other folks. And then the other thing that I've really concentrated on is taking some more classes around the spirituality piece of humanity and the earth, and how we can continually remind people to draw their energy from the earth and from each other in a positive way. And so that just this whole last 2 years, I had surgery and I had a lot of challenges to overcome. And it just became so clear to me to refocus, simplify, and move forward in a way of presence that I had not done before. I had wanted to be competitive. I'd wanted to stay focused on surviving. And I think that really became something that put me in a place where I was not energetically improving the planet. I was, and that's what I want to do is I want to be a positive space and a positive energy for my horses, for my friends, for my family, for people I've never met before. So anyway. that was what I wanted to say. So I did bring something good into 2022.
Yes, absolutely. Nathan, what's on your mind?
But for what I've been hearing, and I think one thing that I feel like I would just be repeating a lot of what I kind of said earlier and what others have definitely said, that I think what before we would have just easily overlooked and just really thought is like being too simple. You know, Judy had mentioned earlier, just drinking a cup of tea. I know for myself, you know, I prefer coffee. So finding, you know, moments of just really being able to savor a good cup of coffee or going out in the nature more. I definitely spend this last, I mean, I've always spent a lot of time in nature, but I definitely feel as though I've leaned on that time in nature a bit more and have had to require it to maybe not be more resourceful, but just really kind of be there as an anchor to just be more consistent in my life. And we mentioned earlier that, you know, we are sort of being bombarded by a lot of negative things in the media and just, you know, things in our communities, and our brains are wired, you know, toward that negativity bias to just sort of be aware of what's in our environment and that we need to avoid. And there's no shortage for us these days in terms of just things that we're hearing about, you know, that we need to avoid. And the practice of being able to neutralize that, to, you know, come into those moments of awe and gratitude, the energy it seems for a lot of us to bring that into our lives and make that a ritual. It feels like it's a more challenging, and it can even maybe feel a little exhausting to counterbalance, you know, all the negativity. But it is a practice that it sounds from you know, everyone in this chat that we are seeing that we still, despite things feeling like a mess and are, you know, feeling out of sorts with what's going on in our community, we still have those simple practices that that do keep us anchored and do keep us moving forward with a level of optimism. There's still, I hear a lot of hope. I certainly don't hear this sense of like helplessness within this group. So that's just one thing that really wanted to name, that yeah, things are super messy, and I think for a lot of us, our sense of self could, you know, really feel out of sorts, but we're still moving forward. There's a lot of resilience that I'm hearing within this group today.
So Ms. Leaf, for yourself, for the year, what are you kind of like thinking? Where are you at? If there were one thing to identify that you are planning to do differently or that you're excited about?
Well, you know, what's interesting, I mean, so much of what's been said today really resonates, but I think it was Tiffany maybe that talked about that idea of, you know, instead of skating, you know, wildly and freely across the ice, you're sort of like, you know, trying to not fall over, you know, and that really resonates with me, is sort of somehow in these last couple of years, there's been this change for me from being sort of exuberantly excited about life, right? Like I'm, you know, I'm the kind of person that people just are annoyed by, right? Like I wake up in the morning and I'm like, oh, what are we gonna, you know, and I'm up out of bed and ready to go and do this and do that. And people are like, we're still sleeping, you know, take it easy. Or I go outside and I say, look at that, look at that, look at that, you know, and I'm just all, you know, excited about all these things. And what I've noticed is that that's changed my ability to be excited about things, or to see, even it struck me when Nathan was talking, it's almost like that negativity bias, right? It's way easier now to see the ice and think I'm going to fall over than see the ice and think I'm going to go ice skating on it. So I think that's something that's coming out of 2021 or 2020. I don't know when exactly it started. That's been really hard, and I don't particularly like it, right? I certainly don't like that as a quality about myself. I would prefer to be the other way. So I think going into 2022, it's trying to sort out how to reconnect to that part of myself that sees sees the positive, right? That sees the solutions, that sees the hope, that sees the possibility for adventure, you know? And I don't yet know how to do that. So I feel like it's, you know, like this. So I always, every year, Ian and I do we do something, a ritual around, you know, either the solstice or maybe sometimes we do it around New Year's, whatever, a time of reflection around what we've taken with us, you know, what we've learned from the year before and what we're bringing in and what we want to manifest in the coming year. Well, this year I haven't done it yet. And I think that's really telling. That's what it feels like, is like I'm in this weird stuck like limbo land where I'm not really entirely sure where or what or how to change. And so everything you guys are writing about kind of that, you know, like you were talking, Judy, about kind of that window of tolerance and sort of how it narrows as you're kind of trying to just get through. And there isn't as much, yeah, exactly. The threshold. That's exactly, it's that feeling of sort of just the stop. And I have this little tiny glimmer of like, I think maybe it's going to get better. And I think maybe somehow I'm going to learn from this time and something's going to shift, but it hasn't quite happened. So that's sort of where I'm at. So thank you for asking. And this whole month has just been so helpful for me personally to get to listen and be a part of the conversations that have been going on, and just really seeing people, you guys showing up in these conversations with your heart, you know, that sense of authenticity and presence and being here and being involved in sort of trying to sort it out. I just feel like that's been really helpful. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I think the up and down of it too, you know, and it's so not linear. And, you know, you can have a couple of days or a week where it's really, really feeling like it's better. You know, last summer was really a high for us in our country, in our part of the country. COVID was down and suddenly things felt more normal again, and then suddenly not again. And so that's up and down. And then, of course, individually, we always are up and down too already, just as emotional beings. And but to have that sort of that positivity and that faith that's not fake, that's not just this like, you know, cheerleader kind of like rah rah rah, but that it's real. Yeah, that's big, Leaf.
Well, you know, I just thought of one other thing to add to that is it's something you wrote about, the sort of the new normal. I think that's one thing that I'm also suffering sort of around or struggling with is like this whole Zoom reality of ours. Like there's been such an enormous gift. So I think about what is something I'm taking out of 2021. I've learned how to make powerful connections with people around the world via Zoom. I would never in my wildest imagination thought that I could read people's energy and horses' energy and know how to tell what's happening in somebody's body across thousands of miles and know how to respond to it. And like, it's been such an enormous gift. And then these connections, these points of connection where we can be together in this way when we couldn't, you know, because of travel and all the other things. So all of that's like really positive. But the oddity is that it's gotten me in this place where now suddenly that's my business, right? And it's what I do for a living. And I can't even imagine, I can't see like what's next. Like, and I wonder how many other people have had their sort of work lives, you know, transformed in both really positive ways, but also really tough ways because of all of this. And then what next? And I think that's sort of leading into your next piece for Michael.
Well, I mean, I want to take what you just said, Leaf. And is there someone who hasn't felt like sharing? Someone who wants to talk now? Anything come to your mind as a result of what Leaf just shared, or anything you've heard before? We want to really make room for everyone.
And if nobody that hasn't talked wants to talk, also if somebody has talked and wants to share something about, you know, this idea of how business, business has transformed, or how.
Yeah.
Well, I know for me, oh, sorry, Kalina had her hand up. So just building on what I said before, it's like, I so just want like a place of wellness and peace and positivity, that's what I'm looking to build. And I think there's been a lot of changes back and forth, and just trying to streamline everything and not have to keep doing the same things over and over, like get out of the pattern of what hasn't worked and what is starting to work. And again, like Leaf, God bless her, she's been helping me with that. And I'm so looking forward to that as far as my professional life, because I know where I want to be. I'm just having a struggle getting there, and I know it's baby steps.
I found it really interesting kind of on the outside, because I've been living in that disability community for a while now. And the last paying job I had was working for Disability Determination Services. And when I left, I had asked kind of everybody who was in a position of power or who could make changes to what was going on if I could work from home. I was good at my job. I loved what I was doing. I just couldn't, like, the coming and going, the getting ready, it was all those extra steps that was like preventing me from doing it. And everybody along the way said, absolutely not. There's no way it can happen. There's too, there's confidentiality issues. It's illegal. There's absolutely no way this job can be a remote job. And come 2020, well, of course, that job is a remote job. So what I found really fascinating, and what I've continued to find really fascinating now coming into 2022, was that like, as a disabled person, there was a lot of roadblocks that myself and other people in the disability community had been coming up against, that we were told there's no way around these roadblocks. And then when the able-bodied community needed it, or when the financial community, like when it was up to money and like things staying, when in order for the cogs to continue moving smoothly, that those things needed to happen, the changes happened. And what's been fascinating to me now to see, as like vaccines come out and as people really are craving the return to normalcy, is that those changes are being reversed. Those accommodations that were being made when the masses needed it are not being left in place for the people who continue to need it. And that is something that I find really, really, really fascinating. And I kind of have a little bit of fear that our need for normalcy, or our need for what we know is normal, will kind of negate some of these positive changes that have come of what's happened.
Mhm. One of the things about
Sorry, hang on.
No, the idea of, normal and going back to normal. And I think we've all realized we're not going to go back to what normal is, but I'm just also so aware, and it might be a life stage thing. I just had a birthday, and every 5-10 years, new generations come in. And of course, who's coming after us, and what are the expectation of the 20 somethings I work with, the 30 somethings, the 40 somethings, and what does this time look like to them? And I see it through their eyes, and I hear them at 23 talking about what this time is like for them. And I think that's been very valuable for me too, to kind of, see it, or to try to see through that lens, or hear what comes out of that person who is just starting that school. And it helps me, because it reminds me that some of what I'm going through is that the new normal I want is the old normal we had 10 years ago, and that's never coming back. It's just not. And be okay with that, and then embrace whatever that is going to look like, whether it's TikTok or whether it's, whatever.
Michael, that's so interesting. It ties us back all the way back to Jane and Judy's first talk, and all that came up for me was like this upwelling of grief, right? Of like how to realize that what was normal to some of us, right, is now not going to be normal. And then how do we kind of grieve that and then move forward to whatever this next iteration is. So yeah, it's very interesting, that sort of point of connection back to week one.
I just really enjoy hearing people and this group, and I'm so glad I connected with you all last year or whenever it was. Nathan, how do we move towards sort of the end of this? What do you have a clever way to bring it home?
Yeah, no pressure.
Well, I really hope, I want this to sound sensitive, and I know that there's a lot of big feelings. And one of the things that has sort of been percolating in my mind, something was written in the chat around this idea of being still. And for a lot of us, stillness in some way, even feeling stuck. And so there is this perception of how stillness can actually feel really scary right now. And it made me think of this notion of how we can perceive ourselves either being buried or planted. And I think that there's this idea of, we are these remarkable seeds, and we are in some ways feeling that there is some growth, that there is some movement. We're finding at least those little simple things in our daily lives that give us some sense of hope that we are moving in the right direction. And we maybe feel a little out of sorts, and we don't know which way's up, which way's down. But I think in some ways, despite the fact that things do feel so disorienting, we do have this sense of moving in the right direction. And I just invite us to, despite feeling stuck, despite feeling, so like really quite scared, and what is this new normal? How are things going to pan out for our future, and not just our future, but the next generation? And allowing ourselves to sit with those feelings of feeling stuck, and in some ways finding a sense of possibly stillness, or possibly this subtle movement of moving upward, and beginning to go through this really painful sort of arduous process of blooming into what is to come. And until we break the surface, and until we see the light of day of how this is going to evolve, it's just we're going to be in the dark. It's going to feel really scary, but we're in the dark together. And I think it's incredibly clear from what we're hearing from each other is that we're all at some level experiencing a lot of the same feelings. And I just invite us to lean on each other, to remember that we are moving forward. We're reaching for the light, and we will eventually break ground, and a lot of this will potentially make a lot more sense. It might not, but what's most important is that we're all moving together, and that's, at least for me, it feels comforting to know that we're not alone. We're not alone in this struggle that we're all experiencing on a collective level.
That's so beautiful, Nathan. I wonder if we had the time and you guys wanted to invite Judy to just lead us through a really brief little ritual around that. Judy, I'm sure you have something in your mind coming from that.
Right, absolutely, yes.
Would that
That'd
be
be
okay?
wonderful.
Sure.
Sorry, Judy. I always do this to you. I guess you're used to it by now.
Okay. Look for something for me. So I think one of the things that can be so helpful for us, if you have something in your immediate environment, I also have some tourmaline here, just to hold something that is dear to you, but that can also just be a bit of an anchor, something that can represent your center and what is true for you. And to bring this now, as you just get yourself oriented, feel your contact points with the ground, with your feet or with the chair. And just allow some natural breaths. But just drop your weight. You can swallow if it helps. Draw your attention down to your core, to the seat of our life force, the lower Dantian or Hara, and to take what you are holding and to hold it there, just below your navel, in that core of your life force and energy, and to know that you have that support to help keep you rooted in the ground, firmly, yet able to move from a point of balance, to sway in the wind like bamboo, but to come back to center. And then I invite you to just bring your object, whatever you're holding, to your heart center and hold it here. And know that whatever is going on around outside, scary how it is, out of control as it may be, what is true for you can always be found in here. And while in times like this, those moments of stillness and silence can be scary, because being with ourselves can at times feel too stimulating to our nervous system. If we can take a physical object and help us anchor and remind us what is true for ourselves, then just in that moment, just in this moment now, we can say yes to that. What is true is in front of me, and I am rooted in this earth, and I am supported. And the earth and all our relations, all the beautiful creatures with whom we work and that surround us every day, want us to move forward with hope for their sakes too. We are not alone. And it's okay to just be still for a moment. And then just bring this object up to your third eye. That sight of inner vision, just behind there, the pineal gland. So often thought in so many traditions as the place where our inner sight happens. And just ask that the insights we get are clear, that they can settle, filter down through our hearts, and you can move your object back down to your heart, that whatever insight we get will flourish in the space of our heart and will be done with love and truth. And bring this object back down to your lower Dantian, just below the navel, your core, from where you can take action and know that these things are possible to you. They are available. And whenever you're feeling uncertain, stuck, just take that object and hold it with you for a second and ask for inspiration. And if we can be quiet, then that's those times when inspiration might come through, or after a decent night's sleep. So thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much.
Judy.
Thank you, Judy.
So good to spend this time, you guys. Thank you all so much for being here. And thank you to Michael and Nathan for facilitating this, and for all of you showing up, and Judy for your beautiful offering and all the insights you guys brought. It was really, really special. So thank you.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, everyone. Thank you for being here.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Take care.